Imagine standing on Earth nearly 2 million years ago. The world is almost unrecognizable. There are no cities stretching across the horizon, no roads, no farms, no villages, and no signs of civilization. Endless forests cover the land. Vast grasslands sway beneath powerful winds. Towering mountains rise into the clouds, while icy rivers carve their way through untouched valleys. This is a world ruled entirely by nature. Every sunrise is a new beginning, but every sunset brings another battle for survival. For our ancient ancestors, life is not measured in years. It is measured in days, sometimes even hours. Every morning, they wake up without knowing if they will still be alive by nightfall. Food is never guaranteed. Water can disappear without warning. Danger waits behind every tree. A single mistake can mean death. Unlike modern humans, these early people have the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon. A deep silence settles across the land. Then, the darkness arrives. For modern humans, night is often peaceful. We switch on lights, lock our doors, and feel safe inside our homes. But for our ancient ancestors, night was the most dangerous part of every single day. There were no walls, no doors, no windows, no fire to keep predators away, only endless darkness. As temperatures dropped, a cold wind swept across the open plains. Families gathered together, pressing their bodies close for warmth. Adults wrapped children in animal hides, hoping they would survive until sunrise. Every breath formed a cloud in the freezing air. Sleep was never deep. Every sound mattered. A crack of a branch, the rustle of tall grass, a distant growl. Each noise could mean that something was hunting nearby. Unlike humans, many predators came alive after sunset. Giant hyenas searched the darkness with powerful jaws capable of crushing bone. Saber-toothed cats moved almost silently, using the cover of night to stalk their prey. Massive wolves hunted in coordinated packs surrounding weak or isolated animals. Early humans knew one terrifying truth. In the darkness, they were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. The group stayed close together. No one wandered away alone. Even a short distance from the others could mean disappearing forever. There were no rescue missions, no search parties. Nature offered no second chances. Instead of sleeping for hours at a time, the group rested in short moments. Some remained awake, while others closed their eyes for a few precious minutes. Parents listened carefully for danger while protecting their children. The oldest members of the group remembered places where predators often appeared. Their experience became the tribe's greatest defense. Knowledge was survival. One mistake could end an entire bloodline, yet humans possessed something unusual. They could learn from every encounter. If a cave proved safe one winter, they remembered it. If a valley was filled with predators, they avoided it. If strange sounds came before an attack, they never forgot them. Little by little, generation after generation, humans became better at reading the world around them. They studied the movements of animals. They watched the stars. They learned the rhythm of the seasons. Long before science existed, observation became humanity's greatest weapon. Still, the cold remained relentless. Without fire, raw meat provided limited energy during freezing nights. Bodies weakened. Children became sick. Older adults struggled to survive harsh winters. Many never saw another spring. Every sunrise felt like a miracle. Every survivor carried invisible scars from countless nights of fear. But somewhere beyond the distant hills, nature was preparing to reveal a force unlike anything humans had ever seen. A force that glowed brighter than the stars. A force that frightened every animal. A force that could transform weak, vulnerable humans into the most powerful species on Earth. It would not come from human hands. It would fall from the sky. And when our ancestors witnessed it for the very first time, the story of humanity changed forever. For thousands of generations, fire was a mystery. No human knew where it came from. No one could create it. No one could control it. It appeared without warning and disappeared just as quickly. To our ancient ancestors, it must have seemed like magic. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered over the horizon. The air became heavy. Birds suddenly stopped singing. Even the animals sensed that something unusual was coming. A powerful storm rolled across the land. Thunder echoed through the valleys. Rain fell in sheets. Then, in a single blinding flash, lightning struck a massive old tree. For a brief moment, the entire forest glowed white. Seconds later, orange flames climbed into the sky. The tree cracked and groaned as fire consumed its branches. The animals fled in every direction. Deer raced across the plains. Birds filled the sky. Even the strongest predators ran from the growing flames. From a nearby hillside, a small group of early humans watched in complete silence. None of them had ever seen anything like it before. The fire moved as if it were alive. It danced. It roared. It swallowed everything in its path. The heat could be felt from hundreds of feet away. Some members of the group stepped back in fear. Others could not look away. They had never witnessed a force that frightened every animal around them. For the first time, humans realized something extraordinary. Even the deadliest predators feared fire. The flames continued burning through the night. From a safe distance, the group watched the glowing forest. The darkness that had always belonged to predators was suddenly filled with light. The cold air became warm. Dangerous animals stayed away. It was unlike anything they had experienced before. When morning arrived, the fire had almost disappeared. Only glowing embers remained beneath the blackened wood. The forest smelled different. Smoke drifted slowly through the air. Burned trees stood like silent monuments. Curiosity slowly replaced fear. One brave individual stepped closer, carefully, very carefully. He reached toward a fallen branch that still held a small, glowing ember. The heat forced him back, but he noticed something. The branch itself was not dangerous, only the glowing end. Using another long stick, he pushed the burning branch across the ground. The fire moved with it. For the first time in human history, a person had carried fire. It was not created by human hands. It was borrowed from nature. The group stared in amazement. Some remained frightened. Others smiled with wonder. Without fully understanding it, they had taken the first step toward changing the future of humanity. But keeping fire alive would prove far more difficult than finding it. A sudden rainstorm, a strong wind, or simple carelessness could erase the precious flame forever. Every glowing ember became priceless. Every burning stick became a treasure. For generations, humans would protect fire with their lives, because losing it meant returning to darkness, returning to cold, returning to fear. The greatest discovery in human history had finally appeared, but humanity still had one enormous challenge ahead. They could carry fire, they could protect it, but they still could not create it. And solving that mystery would take thousands of years. The fire was alive, not like an animal, not like a human, but alive in its own mysterious way. It breathed with the wind. It grew when it was fed. It died when it was neglected. For early humans, this fragile flame became the most valuable thing they had ever possessed. Not gold, not food, not weapons, fire. But there was one terrifying problem. They still had no idea how to make it. Every flame they carried came from nature, a lightning strike, a burning tree, or a wildfire that had survived the storm. If that flame disappeared, there was no second chance. It could be months, even years, before another natural fire appeared nearby. That meant one simple mistake could doom an entire group. So they adapted. Every day, someone was given a special responsibility, not to hunt, not to gather food, but to protect the fire. These people became the silent guardians of humanity's greatest treasure. They never allowed the flames to die. When the group traveled across rivers, forests, and open grasslands, the fire traveled with them. Glowing embers were carefully wrapped inside dry bark. Sometimes they were carried in hollow pieces of wood. Sometimes inside animal skulls lined with ash. The ash slowed the burning, allowing the embers to stay alive for many hours. The journey was never easy. Rain was the greatest enemy. A single storm could soak the precious embers. Strong winds could scatter sparks into the darkness. Children were taught never to play near the fire. Adults constantly checked the glowing coals. Even while sleeping, someone remained awake to feed the flames with dry branches. The fire was never left alone, because everyone understood one truth. Without fire, the cold would return. The darkness would return. The predators would return. As the seasons changed, humans began to notice something remarkable. Food left near the fire tasted different. Meat accidentally dropped into the flames became softer. It was easier to chew, easier to digest. People who ate cooked food seemed stronger. They had more energy. Children grew healthier. Older members of the group survived longer. Without realizing it, these small discoveries slowly changed the human body itself. The fire offered more than warmth. It transformed the way humans lived. Night after night, families gathered around the glowing flames. They shared food. They watched the dancing sparks rise into the sky. The darkness that once filled them with fear became a place where stories could be told. Around the fire, language became richer. Friendships grew stronger. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. The campfire became humanity's very first classroom. It became the center of family, the center of learning, the center of survival. But despite all these incredible discoveries, one mystery remained unsolved. The fire they protected was never truly theirs. It still belonged to nature. If the final ember died, everything would be lost. Humans had learned to carry fire. They had learned to protect it. But they still had not learned the greatest secret of all: how to create it with their own hands. Somewhere in the distant future, one curious mind would begin experimenting with two simple pieces of wood, and that single moment would change the destiny of our species forever. For countless generations, humanity depended on nature to provide fire. Lightning ignited dry forests. Volcanoes released rivers of burning rock. Wildfires swept across the land, leaving behind glowing embers that early humans guarded with extraordinary care. But these gifts from nature were unpredictable. Sometimes months passed without a single flame. Sometimes heavy rain extinguished every ember a tribe possessed. Each time the fire died, fear returned. Cold nights became unbearable. Raw meat once again became the only meal. Predators crept closer under the cover of darkness. Humanity needed more than luck. It needed control. No one knows exactly who first attempted to create fire. Their name has been lost forever. But somewhere, thousands of years ago, one curious human began asking a question no one had asked before. What if fire can be made instead of found? Perhaps it happened by accident. Perhaps someone noticed that two dry branches became warm after rubbing together. Perhaps sparks appeared when one stone struck another. Most attempts failed. Again, and again, and again. Smoke appeared, then vanished. Hands became sore. Wood splintered. Nothing happened. Many would have given up. But curiosity is one of humanity's greatest strengths. One day, after countless failures, something extraordinary happened. A tiny thread of smoke curled into the air. The person stopped breathing for a moment. Slowly, carefully, they continued rubbing the wood. The smoke grew thicker. Then, a tiny glowing ember appeared. It was no larger than a seed. A single breath too strong could destroy it. The ember was gently placed into a bundle of dry grass and soft bark. The person leaned forward. They blew slowly, once, twice, 3 times. Suddenly, the grass burst into flame. For the very first time, a human had created fire with their own hands. No lightning, no volcano, no wildfire, only knowledge, only patience, only determination. That single flame changed everything. Now fire was no longer a rare gift from nature. It became a tool that could be created almost anywhere. Families no longer feared losing their last ember forever. Explorers could travel farther than ever before. Groups could settle in colder regions. Children grew up knowing that warmth was only a few skilled hands away. Around campfires, people cooked food more safely. Stories became longer. Ideas spread faster. Communities grew stronger. Knowledge was no longer lost with every storm. It could be passed on, generation after generation. Fire became more than survival. It became the foundation of civilization itself. Looking back today, it is difficult to imagine a world without matches, stoves, or electricity. Yet every flame we light carries the legacy of that unknown ancestor, the patient inventor, who refused to accept that fire belonged only to nature. Without that moment, cities would never rise, metal would never be forged, ships would never cross oceans, technology would never exist as we know it. Human history was changed forever by a single spark. The first flame did more than light the darkness. It changed the human body forever. At first, early humans simply noticed that cooked food tasted different. Meat became softer, tough roots became easier to chew, hard seeds cracked open after being heated. Meals that once took hours to eat could now be finished in minutes. But something much more important was happening inside the body. Raw meat demanded enormous effort to digest. Every meal required the stomach and intestines to work harder. Much of the body's energy was spent simply breaking food apart. Cooking changed that. Heat had already begun the process. Food became easier to digest. More nutrients entered the bloodstream. The body spent less energy on digestion and had more energy available for growth, movement, and survival. Over thousands of generations, this small advantage became one of humanity's greatest strengths. Children who ate cooked food grew stronger. Adults recovered faster after long hunts. Older members of the group survived longer, giving them more time to teach the next generation. Knowledge stayed alive, and when knowledge survives, a species becomes stronger. Scientists today believe that cooking may also have helped fuel the growth of the human brain. The brain is one of the most energy-hungry organs in the body. Although it weighs only a small part of our total body weight, it consumes an enormous amount of energy every single day. Without enough calories, maintaining a large brain would have been extremely difficult. Cooked food made those calories easier to obtain. Generation after generation, human intelligence continued to grow. People remembered better, planned further ahead, solved problems more effectively, worked together in larger groups. The fire outside the body was helping create a fire inside the mind. But fire offered more than food. It changed where humans could live. Before mastering fire, freezing winters forced many groups to avoid colder regions. Now they could survive where icy winds once made life impossible. They built camps in places their ancestors had feared. The boundaries of the human world expanded. Night also changed forever. Before fire, darkness ended the day. People rested because they had no choice. Now the day continued long after sunset. Families gathered around glowing flames. Hunters discussed tomorrow's journey. Parents taught children how to shape stone tools. Elders shared stories of dangerous animals, distant rivers, and changing seasons. Around the campfire, knowledge became tradition. Tradition became culture. Culture became civilization. For the first time, humans were not simply surviving. They were learning, planning, imagining, dreaming about tomorrow. Even predators began to change their behavior. Animals that once approached human camps now kept their distance. The glow of fire became a warning. Its smoke carried the scent of danger. The hunter was slowly becoming the master of the wilderness. Still, fire was not a solution to every problem. Storms could still destroy camps. Food could still become scarce. Disease still threatened young and old alike. Nature remained powerful. But humanity had gained something it had never possessed before, an advantage. A small advantage at first, yet one that would grow larger with every passing century. The spark that began as a burning branch had become something much greater. It had become the foundation of progress itself. And soon, fire would unlock another incredible discovery, one that would allow humans to create stronger tools, hunt more successfully, and reshape the world around them. The age of survival was becoming the age of innovation. Fire had become more than a source of warmth. It had become humanity's greatest teacher. With every passing generation, people discovered new ways to use its incredible power. What began as a tool for survival slowly transformed into a tool for innovation. At first, the changes were small. Hunters noticed that the tips of their wooden spears became harder after being held carefully over a fire. The heat dried the wood, making it stronger and less likely to break during a hunt. A simple discovery, yet it meant the difference between catching food and returning home empty-handed. Soon, early humans began experimenting with stones. Some rocks cracked when exposed to intense heat. Others became easier to shape into sharp blades. Patient hands learned which materials worked best. Every successful experiment became valuable knowledge. Nothing was written down. Everything was remembered. Parents taught their children. Children became teachers. And generation after generation, human skills continued to improve. Fire also changed the places where people lived. Instead of wandering every single day, some groups began staying in one location for longer periods. A reliable fire made a camp feel safer. Families built simple shelters around it. The campfire became the heart of every community. It was where food was prepared, where tools were repaired, where children learned, where elders shared stories of distant lands and dangerous animals. For the first time in history, people were gathering not just to survive, but to build a life together. As communities grew stronger, teamwork became even more important. Large animals could not be hunted alone. Mammoths, giant bison, and wild horses required careful planning. Hunters gathered around the fire before sunrise. Using sticks and drawings in the dirt, they planned their strategy. Who would lead the animals? Who would hide? Who would throw the first spear? These were the earliest forms of planning and cooperation. The fire gave people time to think before they acted. It turned instinct into strategy. It turned survival into intelligence. The glow of the campfire also changed human relationships. Children listened to stories that explained the stars. Young hunters learned from experienced warriors. Songs and simple traditions began to appear. These moments created trust. They created identity. They created culture. Long before books, long before schools, the campfire became humanity's first classroom. It was here that ideas survived long after the people who first imagined them were gone. Every invention built upon another. Every lesson prepared the next generation for an even greater future. Slowly, almost invisibly, humanity was changing, not because people became stronger, but because they became smarter together. Yet the journey was far from over. There were still vast frozen lands waiting to be explored. There were oceans no human had crossed, mountains no human had climbed, and countless dangers still hidden beyond the horizon. But one thing had changed forever. Humanity no longer faced the future with empty hands. They carried knowledge, they carried hope, and wherever they traveled, they carried fire. That small glowing flame would guide them across continents, through ice ages, across deserts, and eventually toward the first great civilizations. The age of innovation had begun, and the world would never be the same again. Conquering the frozen world. The world was changing. For thousands of years, the climate shifted again and again. Then came one of the greatest challenges humanity would ever face. The Ice Age. Massive glaciers slowly expanded across the northern lands. Entire forests disappeared beneath walls of ice. Temperatures dropped year after year. Strong winds swept across the frozen plains, carrying snow for hundreds of miles. Rivers turned into solid ice. Food became harder to find. Many animals vanished. Others migrated to warmer lands. For early humans, survival had never been more difficult. Every winter demanded impossible choices: stay and risk starvation, or travel into an unknown world where danger waited beyond every hill. Many groups chose to move. Families packed everything they owned: stone tools, animal hides, wooden spears, and, above all, their precious fire. Without it, the journey would end before it truly began. As they crossed frozen valleys, the cold attacked from every direction. The wind cut through animal skins. Snow covered their footprints within minutes. Children struggled to keep walking. Older members of the group fell behind. Every step required strength. Every sunrise was another victory. But fire changed everything. Each evening, they stopped before darkness fell. They built simple shelters from branches, bones, and thick animal hides. At the center of every shelter, a fire burned. The flames melted snow into drinking water. They dried wet clothing. They warmed frozen hands. And perhaps most importantly, they gave people hope. Beyond the circle of light, predators waited. Huge cave lions watched from the darkness. Dire wolves searched for weakness. Massive cave bears wandered through the frozen forests, yet very few dared to approach the fire. Its light revealed danger. Its heat carried an unfamiliar scent. Its crackling sound frightened even the strongest hunters. For the first time in history, humans had created a place where nature hesitated to enter. As the years passed, people became masters of adaptation. They stitched warmer clothing using bone needles. They built stronger shelters. They stored food for the winter. They followed migrating herds across enormous distances. Each challenge made them wiser. Each generation inherited knowledge from the one before it. The frozen world was no longer an enemy. It had become a classroom. The Ice Age forced humans to think differently, to plan further ahead, to work together more closely than ever before. Small families joined larger groups. Skills were shared. Food was divided. Experience became more valuable than strength. In the harshest environments, cooperation became humanity's greatest survival tool. And slowly, almost unbelievably, humans accomplished something no other species had done. They spread across continents, from the frozen landscapes of Europe to the vast plains of Asia, and eventually toward lands no human had ever seen before. Every journey began with a single step. Every camp began with a single fire. The flame that once came from a lightning strike now traveled with humanity across the world. It was no longer just a tool for survival. It had become the symbol of human determination. The Ice Age tested humanity more severely than any challenge before it. But instead of disappearing, humans adapted. They endured. They evolved. And with every frozen mile they crossed, they moved one step closer to becoming the dominant species on Earth. Yet the greatest challenge was still waiting, not in the frozen wilderness, but within humanity itself. As communities grew larger, people would face a new question. How could strangers live together? Without conflict, the answer would shape the future of civilization. And it all began around a fire. For countless generations, survival depended on strength, courage, and luck. Small families wandered across vast landscapes, following migrating animals and searching for fresh water. Every day was uncertain. Every season brought new dangers. But as time passed, something remarkable began to happen. Humans discovered that survival became easier when they worked together. A single hunter could fail. A group of hunters could bring down a mammoth. One pair of eyes could miss danger. 20 pairs of eyes could spot it long before it arrived. Slowly, small families began joining other families. Simple camps grew larger. Children played together. Hunters shared their experience. Elders passed on stories that had been remembered for generations. The campfire remained at the center of everything. It was more than a source of warmth. It became the heart of the community. Every evening, people gathered around its glowing light. Some repaired stone tools. Others prepared food. The oldest members told stories of great hunts, dangerous winters, and distant lands. Those stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons. Lessons about survival. Lessons about courage. Lessons that no one could afford to forget. As communities grew, new challenges appeared. Not every hunt was successful. Food was limited. Disagreements became unavoidable. Who should receive the largest share of food? Who should lead the next hunt? Who would protect the children while others searched for water? For the first time, humans needed rules. Not written laws, not kings, not governments. Simple agreements built on trust. Those who broke the trust of the group risked being left behind. And in the ancient world, being alone often meant certain death. Cooperation became more valuable than physical strength. A skilled tracker became as important as a powerful hunter. An experienced healer became just as valuable as someone who could throw a spear. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a purpose. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. The first communities. Around the fire, people also began to notice patterns in nature. They watched the stars move across the night sky. They recognized the changing seasons. They learned when animals migrated and when rivers flooded. Knowledge was no longer just remembered by one person. It belonged to the entire group. Each generation added something new. A better hunting technique, a stronger shelter, a sharper stone blade. Human progress was becoming cumulative. Unlike any other species on Earth, humans could build upon the discoveries of those who came before them. This was their greatest advantage. Not sharper teeth, not stronger muscles, but shared knowledge, shared memory, shared purpose. As decades turned into centuries, these growing communities spread across new lands. Some crossed frozen valleys, others followed coastlines. Some entered dense forests, others walked into open deserts. Wherever they traveled, they carried three priceless treasures: their families, their knowledge, and their fire. Together, these simple communities laid the foundation for everything that would come next: villages, cities, empires, and, eventually, the modern world. But none of it would have been possible without the countless generations who learned one simple truth: no human survives alone. The greatest invention in history was not just fire, it was cooperation, and together, humanity was finally ready to take its first steps toward civilization. The fire crackled softly beneath the night sky. Its warm light danced across weathered faces. Children listened in silence. Parents watched the darkness beyond the camp. The elders stared into the glowing flames, remembering a lifetime of hardship. None of them could have imagined what their simple campfire would one day become. To them, it was warmth. It was safety. It was survival. But to history, it was the beginning of everything. Every great achievement of humanity can trace its roots back to one simple discovery: fire. Without it, there would have been no cooked food to nourish growing minds, no warmth to survive the endless winters, no light to extend the day beyond sunset, no protection from the predators that once ruled the night. Fire gave humanity time to think, time to learn, time to imagine a future beyond mere survival. Around those ancient flames, something extraordinary happened. Knowledge was shared, ideas were born, children learned from their parents, parents learned from their elders. Each generation inherited more than tools. They inherited wisdom. That wisdom became humanity's greatest weapon. Thousands of years passed. Stone tools became sharper, shelters became stronger, families became villages, villages became cities, cities became civilizations. The same fire that once frightened a saber-toothed cat would one day melt metal, forge swords, bake bricks, power engines, and launch rockets into space. Every modern achievement began with a single spark. Look around your home today. The electricity lighting your room, the food cooking in your kitchen, the glass in your windows, the steel in your buildings, even the smartphone in your hand. None of these would exist without humanity first learning to control fire. The ancient campfire never truly disappeared. It simply evolved. It became the furnace, the factory, the engine, the power station. Every flame throughout history carries the legacy of those first brave humans who refused to surrender to the darkness. Their names have been forgotten. Their faces are lost to time. No monuments were built in their honor. No books recorded their discoveries. Yet their greatest achievement lives inside every modern human life. They gave us more than fire. They gave us possibility. Perhaps the greatest lesson from their story is not about survival. It is about curiosity, the courage to ask a simple question. What if? What if we can make fire? What if we can cross that mountain? What if we can survive another winter? What if tomorrow can be better than today? Those questions transformed a fragile species into the dominant force on Earth. And in many ways, we are still asking those same questions, from exploring the deepest oceans, to landing on the moon, to searching for life beyond our planet. The journey that began beside a tiny campfire continues even now. The flame has never gone out. It burns inside every discovery, every invention, every dream. So the next time you strike a match, light a candle, or watch a campfire dance beneath the stars, remember this: you are witnessing one of humanity's oldest companions, a gift first borrowed from nature, then mastered through patience, courage, and determination. It was never just a fire. It was the first light of civilization. It was the dawn of humanity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the origins of our species. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to Human Dawn and join us as we continue exploring the forgotten stories that shape the world we live in today. Until next time, keep exploring the past, because the past explains who we are.